Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it. I hope that this discussion and this conversation can kind of bring some clarity and some factual information to a situation that has been evolving over the past couple of days. And I definitely want to make sure that we provide you, and most importantly, we provide the community with information that is relevant, that is concise and specific, based upon an incident that occurred at the GEO facility in the city of Aurora. I appreciate you being here today. The Aurora Police Department is committed to transparency and public safety. We are here to set the record straight. And the events surrounding a recent escape at the ICE GEO detention facility, and to correct misleading statements suggesting that the Aurora Police Department failed to appropriately and responsibly respond to a call for service. The facts that I'm going to lay out are going to kind of tell a different story. Let me be clear. The Aurora Police Department can only respond effectively and efficiently when timely and accurate information is provided. That, unfortunately, did not happen during this case. You can see behind me on both sides of the screen a timeline, and that reflects the events and the occurrences that unfolded. And I'm going to give those to you as follows. At 9:30 p.m. on March the 18th, there was a power outage at the ICE GEO facility, which caused some type of security breach. At 10 p.m., ICE officials believe 2 detainees escaped. At 12:30 a.m. on March the 19th, ICE GEO officials completed an emergency head count and confirmed that 2 detainees were missing. At 2:30 a.m., 4.5 hours after the estimated time of the escape, ICE GEO officials finally notified Aurora 911 of a possible escape and requested an Aurora Police Department response. At approximately 3:30, our watch commander, trying to clarify the circumstances of the vague event that was listed, contacted the GEO facility, spoke with the leadership team, verified that the incident was somewhere in the area of 4.5 to 6 hours old, verified the fact that this was not an immediate ongoing situation, and subsequently referred to a memorandum of agreement that the Aurora Police Department has with the GEO facility that talks specifically about how our response will occur and would occur based on certain events. And I want to give you a little bit of that MOU statement so you can kind of understand where that's at. Officers are going to respond to what's known as a hot escape. Those are things that have just occurred, and that is within a 15-minute span of time. If that occurs within a 15-minute span of time and officers become aware of that, they are going to respond and set up a perimeter in certain locations. Obviously, when we look at the time span between 4.5 to 5 hours that before Aurora PD was ever even notified of this event, that had long such passed. Another aspect of the MOU is what's called cold escapes. Those that are discovered during head counts or have 15 minutes plus will be reported to the police. And that's all it says, reported to the police. So again, that's why that watch commander wanted to verify the exact circumstances and the exact timeline related to that. At 5:15, our officers did respond, and they did complete a telephonic report related to the escape of those 2 individuals. In my mind, and I hope in yours, this timeline speaks for itself. The Aurora Police Department was not given immediate notification of an active escape. Instead, we were informed hours later after ICE GEO had already lost valuable time for their own internal response. Had APD been properly notified at the moment of the escape, our officers could have deployed resources immediately to establish a containment, coordinate with regional partners, and to assist in tracking those individuals. But without that information, without that connection, without that accurate communication, this was a situation that Aurora Police Department did not cause. However, we have had the yoke of responsibility put on us for the lack of response. I want to do something real quick, and I'd like to play a tape of the actual dispatch that occurred on that evening. It's a long tape, but it comes from the GEO facility to our Aurora 911, and it details the incident and how it occurred, and it also shows the level and the sense of urgency that unfortunately was not present. And this is a long one, I apologize, but I want to go from start to finish so that there's no aspect.
It was 3130 North Oakland Street for CO 80010.
Yes, and what is it a ICE facility?
It is. It's the Aurora detention facility. Oh, here you go. Wait a sec.
And what is the callback number for you?
Should be 303-361-6612.
Okay, what is your name?
My name is Tiffany Furler.
Tell me exactly what happened.
So we had to start our protocol for escape. We have two residents that we cannot find. I have their names.
Okay.
You have to go find this. Let's go.
Can we get this started, okay?
It's not on site. Next one.
Okay, all right, and what is the first individual's name?
So last name, Vido Romero, V-I-D-O, space R-O-M-E-R-O. First name, Jose, J-O-S-E.
Do you have the date of birth, or his date?
Yeah. 0717-2000.
And the second individual?
Last name is Gonzalez-Gonzalez, G-O-N-Z-A-L-E-Z, space G-O-N-Z-A-L-E-Z. His two first names, so it's Joel Jose, J-O-E-L, and then space J-O-S-E.
And what is his date of birth?
01/21/1993.
And when was the last time that they were seen?
So I believe it was right before count was conducted, 2200.
In Jose, what physical description do you have for him? For the first individual that you gave me?
So ethnicity, which is white Hispanic. Let's see here. We do have this photo, but that's the only description I have for the wait, they're both named Jose. Which one are you referring to? The Gonzalez-Gonzalez. Okay, Vido. Yeah.
Romero.
White Hispanic, height 72, weight 185, black hair, brown eyes.
Okay, and then the second individual.
I have that he's white Hispanic. I have this photo. I do not have his descriptors.
Oh. All right. Well, I did go ahead and put a call in. We'll have some officers go out there as soon as possible.
Okay. Do you guys have because our emergency plan says to have like an escape flyer fax to PD. Do you have like that number, or do I get in contact with PD?
You can go ahead and contact PD.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So again, I wanted you to hear the entire length of that because again, as you could clearly state, that the first time that they realized that there was something amiss was at 10 p.m. We got contacted again at 2:30 a.m. in the morning regarding this. That's a break of almost, well, it's 5 hours. The actual head count itself, where they actually determined themselves that they were gone by themselves, was at 12:30. Even that is an incredible amount of time. So during that actual event on that night, again, APD, Aurora Police Department, was never asked to conduct an active search at the time of the escape, nor were we provided with any of the necessary details to do so. As of this morning, again, our detectives were assigned this particular case for follow-up and any potential to try to see if we could assist in this event. As of 3 p.m. Today, ICE Geo has still not provided essential information, no escape flyers, no booking photos, no further details. Our detectives reached out directly with the ICE ERO to try to verify some of the facts of it. ICE declined to offer to be involved in this and stated that APD was not expected to assist in cold escapes. ICE supervisors confirmed that there was never an expectation for APD to lead this investigation, yet it has become basically public sentiment and statements that ICE has suggested otherwise. Again, this mischaracterization, in my humble opinion, is unacceptable. I think it reflects incredibly negatively on the Aurora Police Department and our willingness and our desire to serve this community and to ensure that this community is safe at all times for any event or any incident that occurs. And that's really what this is about. This is not about trying to point fingers. It's not about saying who did what or how did this happen or why did this happen. In my opinion, and the reason I'm standing at this podium today, is to bring clarity to a situation that has not been clear. I want the people and the citizens of Aurora to understand that we are here to serve them. I want the federal government to understand that we continue our commitment to be in partnership with their law enforcement professionals if and when they are dealing with individuals that are committing crime. And I think that's another aspect of this as well that I think we have to navigate and look at. Under Aurora law, again, Colorado House Bills 19-1124 and 2311, law enforcement, municipal law enforcement, cannot arrest or detain someone solely for civil immigration violations. These two individuals that were being held at the Geo facility were there for civil immigration. Obviously, when there was the escape, that changed the dynamics of that. But until that becomes a federal offense and until that federal warrant gets signed and gets issued and then gets posted onto our systems, not only can Aurora Police Department not apprehend them, no other law enforcement agency throughout Colorado can apprehend them. And as of about a half hour ago, those warrants, they have been signed, but those warrants are still not in the system. So if an officer in Pueblo, if an officer in Colorado Springs, if an officer in Denver or Aurora stops them right now, they still aren't going to know who those individuals are based upon that lack of that information being supplied into the NCIC system and into that warrant system. The one thing I want to clarify here too as well is that, again, we have, and I have personally as chief of police of this organization, been a supporter of ICE. I have made statements in front of many of you here today that I will support ICE, I will support HSI, I will support them in their endeavors to hold individuals that victimize or mistreat or criminalize other individuals accountable. And again, that is not a political statement. Before the transition of this political party, the prior political party, I made the exact same statements. My values, my endeavor, my commitment to ensuring that people in the city of Aurora are safe does not change with a political party. It is focused on what is right, what is ethical, and what is constitutional. And when I look at this event tonight and I see this misinformation, to me, again, that tarnishes the representation of an incredible department with a number of incredible officers and personnel that are committed to the service of this community and providing safety to this community. This was not something that was lackadaisically looked at. It was something that was not swept under the rug. This was something that was not, we don't want to get involved because of federal issues. This was something that we were not provided with accurate, timely, and effective information to respond accordingly. So again, I hope that that is crystal clear. We still support the federal partnership, and that will never change. Again, I think Aurora Police Department is one of the only agencies since the Lake and Riley Act that has continually supplied a list to ICE individuals and ICE department that focuses on those allegations or those crimes that are documented in that particular act. We are continually at that GEO facility. We constantly provide security for the events, for the protests, for the marches, and we will continue to do so to make sure that that place is safe and that the community in and around that place is safe. And that is what our role is. So while this escape, again, it occurred on a federal facility managed by ICE and GEO, our priority remains the same, which is keeping Aurora safe. We are always willing to assist in emergency situations. We will not allow misinformation to damage the reputation of this department in any way. Again, like I said, and I'll say it again, you have some incredibly dedicated personnel. And those personnel were out there on the evening of this escape, and had information been supplied timely, had it been supplied effectively, we would have responded according with our MOU and with our policies and our procedures. But if that information is not supplied, we cannot make things up. We can't just telepathically think, oh, this must have occurred and we're going to drive over there. And when you're looking at a 4.5 to a 5 hour time delay, that is concerning. And so my goal for this, again, is not about pointing fingers. It's not about saying who did what wrong or how this happened. It's about ensuring that our partnership with ICE, ensuring our partnership with the community is clear and is transparent. And anything that we need to do to modify that, to fix it, to change it on any person's aspect or any entity's aspect or any agency's aspect is addressed effectively so that we can ensure the safety of the community that we serve. Again, I want the people of Aurora, they deserve the facts. They don't deserve misinformation or rumors. We take our duty incredibly seriously here. We respond appropriately with the limited information given, and we will continue to hold ourselves and other agencies accountable to the higher standards within this incredible profession. And so with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions that anybody has.
Are you saying that there's no law enforcement actively searching for these two?
No, there's going to be law enforcement that will be out there. If there is a crime committed by these individuals and they get detained, again, there will be an apprehension. What I was saying is that the warrant that actually, if an officer stopped these individuals on the street and they ran these individuals, that warrant is still being processed. It has not been entered into the system. It might have been entered in the past 15 minutes, but up until about 15 minutes ago, that was not entered. So you do have federal agencies that I'm sure are looking for these individuals. Again, if they are in the city of Aurora. And I think that's an important aspect to remember too, is that this GEO facility, although it's in the city of Aurora, there's individuals that are detained from there from throughout the state of Colorado. That is not an Aurora specific venue. So again, where these individuals are, what they're doing, they could be anywhere, at any location. But if our officers do come across them in an investigation or during the course of their duties, hopefully that warrant will be in the system so that when we run these individuals, we will know exactly who we are dealing with.
How did you feel yesterday when you first saw this statement putting some blame on APD?
You know, to be honest with you, disappointed. I think disappointed like in any other relationship. When you build trust and when you build a relationship with an entity, especially with that location that we have spent countless hours at, providing protection, allowing for ingress and egress of their buses, of their facilities, making sure that if there was First Amendment marches or if civil disobedience or any type of crowd control situation, We were on scene. We were there to support them. Again, it wasn't them coming out dealing with these crowds. It wasn't them coming out dealing with activist groups. It wasn't them coming out dealing with civil disobedience or First Amendment marches. It was the Aurora Police Department. And so again, that's really what it comes down to, is the disappointment, is the fact that the information was not relayed specifically or correctly. And if we would have done something, again, if they would have called and said, hey, these two escapees are out and we see them running across the field and we need you here now, we would have been there. But that is not what unfolded. This information came 4.5 to 5 hours late. It was not specific. It wasn't detailed. And again, it did not raise to a level that fell within our MOU, and it also didn't raise within a level that any other entity would have responded in the way that they had the expectation that we were going to respond when they were basically lacking in their procedures and their protocols to inform law enforcement that this event had unfolded.
What needs to happen to rebuild that trust with ICE?
You know what? It's not done. This is one event, and again, ICE's mission and what they do is important, and what they do as far as ensuring safety is important, and that's what I want anybody in ICE or anybody within DHS to understand. This is not, well, we're going to take our ball and go home, because that is not what this is at all. This is about clarity to the community, because I still believe in what ICE does. When ICE focuses on the mission of holding criminals that have victimized others, that have immigration status, and they have been involved in crime, if law enforcement needs to get involved in that, we will continue to be involved. I'm going to continue to partner with them. But again, I think what the problem was is the lack of communication on this. And then not only was there lack of communication, but then the communication that did come out, it was not correct. It was misrepresented. And again, I think for me, it's not about trying to address it with ICE. It's about trying to address it with the community, that they know that they have a department that has due diligence, that will do what is necessary, that is not dismissive on an event that could involve or jeopardize the safety of the community. And unfortunately, that is what was demonstrated in this discussion, and that's what's been talked about, and you've talked about it throughout the past day and a half. And that's why I'm standing here, is to try to rectify that, address it. Hopefully, we will all learn from this, and then we will continue on in a partnership that will have benefits and safety to the community that we all serve.
So what was kind of like your first reaction to hearing that 911 call, those long pauses in call, and just a general lack of a sense of urgency?
It kind of fit in line with the basic timeline that I have and the timeline that I gave you that's up here. Again, the realization that when we look at our computer-assisted deployment, and it shows on our CAD system that the individual on this phone said, yeah, the first time we noticed they weren't here was 10 o'clock. But then when we do the report, we get told, no, it was 12:30 after a head count. And then even after 12:30, they still did not call until 2:30. What does that mean? Were they going through their own protocols, trying to, oh man, I hope these guys aren't really gone? I don't know. And I don't want to get in their business or their shop. But I'm just saying that when you look at a 4.5 to a 5 hour delay, and then you put all of that responsibility onto Aurora Police Department, I hope there's some self-assessment that's going on in that GEO facility, and I also hope there's some self-assessment that's going on at ICE. Because this is not about, oh, we're pushing away from ICE because of some political agenda. Law enforcement, myself, I am completely apolitical. This is not that thing that you might hear on the news where it's, oh, we're not going to do negative. That is not what this is about. We are going to support ICE, and I will continue to support ICE. This is about how can we make things better? How can we provide information that doesn't make our community, again, feel like the Aurora Police Department is not performing their job, or the Aurora Police Department is not addressing activity that could possibly harm them?
Have you had any communication with ICE or that GEO facility on how you guys are going to address situations like this in the future if it does happen again?
I have, yeah. I've spoken both with ICE and I also spoke with the GEO facility. And I said, hey, here's where we're at. The information that's going out is not correct. And I think that we need to get beyond that. And I think that we need to start looking at systems of how we can make things better. How we can, again, help them, or they can understand where these breakdowns occurred so that they can more effectively address this again if anybody else walks out of that place.
That facility appears quite vulnerable to a power outage. Do you have concerns about ICE and GEO's ability to keep citizens of Aurora safe in a power outage?
Well, I think the power outage itself spoke for itself. Again, I don't know what systems they have. I'm not a GEO leader. I'm not the warden at that facility. I'm not in that chain of command. But if you have power that goes out and you have two individuals just walk out the door, I think that's a problem. So hopefully this will be a wake-up call for them as well, to analyze their systems, to analyze their protocols, not only on the walkout, but on the sense of urgency of providing timely information to get assistance if and when that does occur.
Was the outage exclusively that facility, or was it in the area?
That I don't know. Again, I think it was primarily at that facility.
In those conversations with them, what did they say in response?
You know what? I wish it would have been more of a partnership. And again, I'm going to be very transparent and very open about this, but it wasn't. I think that they feel that everything that they did and the time frame that they worked within was 100% correct. And again, like I said, I'm not going to get into their tactics. I'm not going to get into their procedures or what they believe is correct or not correct. But I'm going to say it was incorrect as far as a response that they were hoping for from police. Because on any call for service that's 5 hours to 4.5 hours old, you are going to get a much different response than if they would have called at 10:01 and said, hey, we just had 2 people walk out of our facility. We need law enforcement here now. It's a very different response. And that's what I think that they're still struggling with, to be very honest with you.
You said that this message is not political, it's not pointing fingers, so you're worried they're going to see it that way.
That's up to them. Again, I can't control how they perceive things. All I can control is what the community of Aurora sees. And what I hope the community of Aurora sees is that this department is committed to their safety. This department does not take calls or incidences like this lightly. It's not anything like what has been portrayed, and it never will be. Again, there is always struggles with getting to calls for service, and that's something we continually in law enforcement as a whole deals with. But on an incident like this, had we been provided more specific, more detailed, more urgent information as opposed to 4.5 to 5 hours old, the circumstances and the outcome might have been very, very different.
Why was the public not notified sooner? Is that something that in this situation is ICE's responsibility? Is that either agency's responsibility?
Yeah, that's not our responsibility, so that would have to fall on the shoulders of ICE if that is in their SOP. And again, I said I don't want to get involved in what their procedures are, but it's not our responsibility in that arena.
Chief, how many protesters or police might have been out there when this occurred?
I don't know if there was any at that time. I know that throughout the past, and that's what when I talk about that partnership, that's what is a little frustrating, because we were out there for the past 2 or 3 days. Our officers were out there facilitating the function of that venue, making sure that people could get in and out, making sure that they could go about their business. And I don't think that a lot of people understand what that means. We do not have a depth of officers that we can just randomly pull from. Every officer that's standing out in front of that geo facility is an officer that's not out in a black and white, that's not handling calls for service. And again, that's a problem. But that's something that we navigate, because we are here to support our federal partners, and we are also, again, and I mean this sincerely, we are here to support those individuals that are involved in First Amendment activity, or those community groups in and around that area that are part of that First Amendment activity. So if there's a demonstration, if there's a protest, if it's peaceful, if it's lawful, we want to make sure that that is facilitated as well. So we are there for either side. And when you have a location like that in your city, that is always a struggle and always a balance, and it's always something that you have to look at your resources and figure out how are we going to effectively do all these things for everybody with the limited amount of resources that the Aurora Police Department does have.
Do you guys feel like you were blamed in a way, where they are trying to almost avoid responsibility for what happened?
Based on the news, based upon the discussions that we've had, I think based upon the reason that you are here for me to try to bring clarity to this event, I would say blame is definitely a term I would use. Yes.
On that 911 call, the dispatcher could have handled it a little differently with just, as I mentioned before, there were some very long pauses. That's why that call went on so long.
Yes. And again, the Aurora 911 is its own system, is not connected with law enforcement. And again, they have protocols as well that, again, start setting up the protocols for what, are they going to dispatch cars, or they aren't going to dispatch cars. And so that's something you would have to have a discussion with Aurora 911. Anything else?
Was it really that easy? They just walked out the door? There was no struggle? They didn't have to...
And again, I don't know the circumstances of it. I know that 2 people left that facility. I don't know in what way, but I know that, again, it doesn't appear that there was any major violence connected to it or any issues violence. It sounds like it was strictly the electricity went out. It sounds like a gate was deactivated and they just had the opportunity to just walk off. But hopefully you can get that clarified with a conversation through Geo.
Less than an hour ago, my public record request for the 911 call was denied and closed. Are you planning to send that out now that?
Yes, we will. You've heard it and you got it all taped. And that's why I wanted to run the whole 6 minutes. Because there's good and bad. And I want there to be, again, from closure to beginning, where it's at. I want the time frame. I want the discussion, the fact that they first acknowledged this at 10 o'clock, the last time they saw them. Again, which again speaks volumes about the first time that they acknowledge it is 12:30 in the report. The first time they report it to law enforcement is at 02:30 in the morning. Again, that's 4.5 to 5 hours delay. And that changes the dynamics of how police respond, not only to an incident like this, but to any incident. Anything else?
How long has the MOU been in place?
Yeah, this MOU, it is signed. I'm looking for what the signature date is. It's been in place since May of '07. And again, the MOU is very specific, and that's what our watch commander navigated. Because, like I said, a hot escape is anything less than 15 minutes. That's where Aurora's mission and focus would be to respond and set up a perimeter on pre-planned streets. And then anything after 15 minutes is what's known as a cold escape. And those cold escape, there is no obligation, and again, it's as even the ICE stated, there was no potential or no request for us to be involved in that process after the cold escape.
Is there and has there been a BOLA alert for those two folks?
I think there is one in the process, and I believe that our detectives are also putting that in place as well.
But what there wasn't this morning, for example?
The detectives were working on it, getting the information to do it.
Do you happen to know the local charges Gonzalez was facing?
I don't know specifically. I know the reason they were in there is because whatever charges they were on, they were not filed or they bonded out on them. And then basically what I said, just like when I talked about and referred back to that law, they were basically being held there for civil immigration violations, which again changes it between HSI and the ERO process. Anything else? Again, thank you so much for being here. I hope it does bring clarity to your discussions. And more importantly, I hope it brings clarity to the community that we are so humbly thankful to serve, and that we want to make sure they understand that our commitment to their safety is unwavering. Thank you very much.